Bold, outrageous, forgotten star of swinging 60s pop art finally gets solo show. Before she died, aged 28, Pauline Body's work brought a female gaze to the London art scene. Now she is set to reach a new generation. Rob Walker. Some 26 Nov 2023 14.00 GMT. When Marilyn Monroe died in August 1962, the British artist Pauline Bodie did what she always did when something happened in the world that affected her. She turned to her easel to paint it. The resultant pop art picture captured a happy and carefree Marilyn set against a background of red roses, while on either side gray abstract panels seemed to close in around her. "It's clever, it's sad, but it's full of joy," says Darcy Tate, an art historian who has been researching Bodie's life and work for more than 20 years. Pauline loved Marilyn Monroe, and she identified very closely with her, the way the system did her down, the way that when you're blonde and beautiful, you can also be clever and successful. That was Bodie's experience too. In the 1960s, London scene crowded with men. The Royal College of Art, where Bodie studied, didn't even have a women's toilet. The young British artist stood out not only for being a gorgeous, sensual, charismatic woman, says Tate, but for turning the conventions of the day on their head. Her work was so bold, so outrageous, so unusual, and she so shattered gender expectations that people couldn't cope, she says. Art historians now broadly agree that Bodie's work stands alongside the best pop art of the era, and had she not died at the age of only 28, many believe she was on course to become one of the great artists of her generation. After her death in 1966, Bodie's work was overlooked, forgotten even, for decades. It's thanks largely to Bodie's sister-in-law, Bridget Bodie, a Kent dairy farmer, that the work survived at all, squirreled away in one of the farm's barns. Bringing Bodie back to visibility has been a long slog, Tate says, but this week's solo exhibition at London's Gazelle Art House will allow visitors to see some of her most highly regarded work. Paintings in colleges filled with faces and images of the day, from Elvis to Marilyn, American gangsters to scandalous British politicians, race riots in America to the missile crisis in Cuba, will go on display. Bodie's signature style was tied up in the way she portrayed women. No one at the time celebrated women's sexual pleasure in the way Bodie did, Tate says. For example, her 1963 painting, 54,321, a reference to the TV culture show of the time, Ready, Steady, Go, blazes with the banner, "Oh for a few." The use of the F word at the time will have been deeply shocking, but for her it was funny and tongue-in-cheek, says Tate. Another painting on show is titled With Love to Jean-Paul Belmondo, which sold at Sotheby's last year for £1.2 million, a record for a Bodie piece, and a price tag that is testament to how the art world now perceives her work. The exhibition aims to tell Bodie's story through her paintings, collages, and stained glass works, and also through photographs, film footage, letters, and posters. She's a very important political feminist artist, but she was also really embedded in the swinging 60s in lots of different ways beyond painting, says Gazelle's George Barker, one of the curators of the show. It's true that Bodie packed an awful lot into her short life. She was one of the first people in Britain to spend time with Bob Dylan when he came to the country in the winter of 1962, on the invitation of Bodie's then lover, film impresario Peter Saville. She acted alongside Michael Caine in the 1966 film Alfie, and was a presenter on radio show The Public Ear. She even interviewed the Beatles. Although she was hugely popular on the social scene, people also feared her because she challenged the stereotypes of the time, Tate says. Bodie went on to marry the political activist and then literary agent, Claude Goodwin, in June 1963, one of the few men, she said, who appreciated her as a person with a mind, and became pregnant in 1965. It was on a routine prenatal appointment that Bodie found out she had cancer. Doctors offered her an abortion so that she could receive potentially life-saving radiotherapy, but Bodie refused. A few months after her daughter was born, in July 1966, Bodie died. There is tragedy running through Bodie's story. Her husband subsequently died from a brain hemorrhage in a prison cell in America, where he was being held on suspicion of drunkenness. Her daughter, Bodie Goodwin, died too, from a drug overdose at a party celebrating the end of her art degree. Aged 29, she lived only 1 year longer than her mother. Tate hopes visitors to the exhibition will focus less on the tragedy and more on how Bodie enriched pop art by bringing together both celebration and critique in a way no one had before. This is the moment where she can be heard and really contribute to culture in a way that she couldn't in the 60s. She was just too much, says Tate.